Welcome to everyone. Before declaring the meeting open, I must advise that this meeting will be recorded. Clause 91(4) of the Governance and Meeting Conduct Local Law provides the following. This public meeting is being recorded to improve access to the meeting for our community. The recording will be published and will be retained by Council in accordance with Council's legal obligations. As a visitor in the gallery, your presence may be recorded. I'll now declare the meeting open, and in doing so, acknowledging the traditional owners. We acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we are meeting. We pay our respects to their elders and to elders from other communities who may be here today. And the opening prayer. Almighty God, we humbly ask Thee to bless and guide this council in its deliberations so that we may truly preserve the welfare of the people whom we serve. Amen. I welcome everyone here tonight to the ordinary meeting of Council. Acceptance of apologies and granting of leave of absence. Is that you? Yeah. There's a recommendation under item 5 of acceptance that Councillor Mark Curry be granted leave of absence for the period 15th of May to the 16th of May. Someone move the recommendation? I'll move that. Move Councillor Bussell and seconded Councillor Rees. Any discussion? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? The motion's carried. Order of business, confirmation of minutes. The recommendation there under item 7. Move Councillor Benton, second Councillor Fuller. Any discussion? I'll declare the motion carried. Conflict of interest disclosure. I will be declaring a conflict under item 14.2 as I'm the previous director of the Wangaratta RSL sub-branch. No petitions, no deputations, presentation of reports. The Mayor's quarterly report is with pleasure that I report to the community on your council operations since my previous report in February. I've continued my Mayor's drop-in sessions, and whilst they have supplied me with many requests, with the advent of cooler weather, they've tapered off a bit. It would be remiss of me if I didn't compliment my fellow councillors for their efforts on behalf of ratepayers over the last few months. The formation of the council plan for the next 4 years, coupled with many hours of discussion in respect to the 2017-18 budget, have meant many late nights, and not once has there been an argument about my request for additional call on their time. So thank you all. There are still unanswered questions on some of our operations. The biggest, I believe, is the drawn-out application we have with the EPA in respect of a licence to operate our own organic recovery plant. Whilst the introduction of this collection has seen some 52% of what was going to landfill is now being organically processed, be it in Shepparton at the cost of more than $500,000 to the city, the life of our landfill has been extended by some 12 years. We're still trying to set up a management company to operate the sale yards and hope to have this in operation this financial year. I joined our local member Tim McCurdy in opening the new netball change rooms and courts at Greta last month. Our budget for 2017-18 sees an allocation for the same sort of development at Moyu for the netballers, and this will only leave Glenrowan and North Wangaratta as the only O&K clubs without separate rooms for netballers. Glenrowan is on our radar for a big upgrade later this year. Some time has been spent on the assessment of the 51 applications for this year's major community grants, and 14 of these, 10 in rural areas, have been recommended to receive funding by the subcommittee set up to look at the applications. One considerable concern the council has had was the operation of the Planning and Building Department and the time taken in processing requests. Councillor Rees is in constant communication with them, and I'm pleased that there appears to be an improvement in the time taken to issue permits. Certainly the councillors are not receiving so many complaints these days. I had a very fruitful discussion with the Premier on the day he announced the hospital funding at North East Health, and I think he wants Wangaratta to remain on his radar for some more funding through the council. Meetings with regional cities, of which there are 10, have been attended, but men are certainly outnumbered in the mayoral stakes, with 6 of the 9, as Geelong are in administration, having lady mayors. I represent the city on the Municipal Association of Victoria, which also meets in Melbourne. The pleasing event that I hosted a few weeks ago was to welcome back the councillors and officers who made up the first council of the rural city of Wangaratta in 1997. 8 of the original councillors attended on the night, as did many councillors who've served since then, together with our Chief Commissioner from 1993 until the council was elected, and 2 of our just retired administrators from 2013 to 2016. We're seeing more and more organisations using our Performing Arts Centre for conferences and seminars, and as Mayor there are many functions where I'm asked to welcome delegates or give an opening address. There is hardly a day that goes by that I'm not requested for comment on television, radio or print media. My council colleagues are only too willing to attend functions where clashes occur, and I thank them for this. As a community, you should be proud of the performance of your council. They've picked up the cudgel and are working extremely hard to make your municipality one of the best. Of course, we cannot please all of our ratepayers all of the time, but we are making sure we're acting for all in the decisions we are making. Thank you. Could I have a motion to accept that report, please? Councillor Amery, seconded Councillor Rees. Any discussion?
I'd just like to also thank yourself for your efforts in the last 6 months. We've had a quick 6 months, but thank you very much for all your attendance. You've done a lot, and given the colloquial anecdotes around your age, you've done a tremendous amount of work, and we appreciate that. Thank you, Mayor Clark.
Thank you, Councillor Fuller.
I'd like to talk in that too.
I'd like to talk on that one too. I see as an opponent for the mayor at the mayoral position when we first were elected as councillors, I certainly look at the amount of work that our mayor does do and think back to how happy I was that I was beaten, because the amount of work that he does is astronomical, and it is a great commendation for the rural city to have a mayor who has this workability and for us all. Thank you.
Discussion? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Motion's carried. Officers' reports. Corporate services.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's actually with some pride that I introduce this council report, because it's the first budget for this newly elected council. The 2017-18 budget contains a number of productivity and efficiency savings that we've made as an organisation as part of our future program. And the key elements of the budget are a 2% rate rise in accordance with the state government's Fair Go rating system. There's a $7.3 million operating surplus that, together with $5 million in borrowings, will help us to fund a $28 million capital works program. The budget's been prepared after rigorous internal consultation, both with officers and with councillors. And now we're moving into the public consultation phase. So the recommendation is that council will give public notice of its draft budget and will receive submissions up to Friday the 16th. Submissions will be heard by a committee of councillors on Monday the 19th of June, and it is proposed to adopt the budget at a special meeting on the 26th of June.
What about the recommendations?
Well, I've kind of summarised the recommendation. So the recommendation is on page 7, and that is that council endorses the draft budget attached to the report and authorises the Chief Executive Officer to give public notice of the preparation of the draft budget in the Wangaratta Chronicle and make available for public inspection at the Wangaratta Government Centre and also on council's website, and that will receive submissions up to the 16th of June.
Someone like to move the recommendation? Any questions from the floor on the budget? There should have been copies at the back at the door, so. None there. Are there any questions from the floor? No questions from the floor? I'll put someone... Councillor Amory, seconded Councillor Fuller. Any discussion?
I'd just like to thank CMT and the officers responsible. They've done a lot of work to get us to this point. I appreciate their effort they've put in.
Thank you, Councillor Fuller. Any other discussion? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Motion's carried. (14.1) Community Wellbeing.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This first report is in relation to the council plan for 2017-2021. So similar to the budget, this is the first council plan that this council has developed, and it has been pulled together on the back of quite significant community consultation. So over 2 periods over the last few months, we have engaged across the municipality with residents around what they see as things that are important and worthy of consideration and action within the council plan. We've received already over 600 individual comments from community members around what they would like to see council focus their attention and resources on. All of those comments have been analysed and fed into the draft of the council plan. There's also been significant workshop with councillors and council officers around the things that need to be considered and incorporated. They've also been fed into the council budget to enable us to be able to resource these actions and strategies. The recommendation before council tonight is that council endorses the draft 2017-2021 council plan that's attached, that council authorises the CEO to give public notice of the preparation of the draft within the Chronicle on Friday the 19th of May, that it makes available for public inspection the draft council plan, and that it publishes the draft plan on council's internal website, and that submissions are received from on Friday the 16th of June 2017. And that all submissions are considered by council and will be presented to council for recommendation at the special council meeting to be held on the 26th of June 2017.
Questions from the floor? No questions from the floor? Councillors, someone like to move the recommendation? Councillor Roos, Councillor Amory. Any discussion? Motion's carried. 14.2. Yeah. Have to wait till I take this off.
Uh, 14.2 is a relating to the property in Templeton Street, which will be the RSL club rooms. Jamie.
Thank you. So this report is before Council tonight for the consideration of the application that has been made from the Wangaratta RSL sub-branch for the relocation and the increase of gaming machines in their new premises in Templeton Street in Wangaratta, otherwise known as the Old Sydney Hotel. The application that has been presented to the VCGLR, which is the Victorian Commission for Gambling and Liquor Regulation, increases the application for the RSL to have 32 gaming machines, at which they're currently licensed, with an increase up to 50 as part of their request. The recommendation before Council tonight is that Council supports the proposal at the VCGLR hearing for the relocation of the existing 32 electronic gaming machines from the existing RSL in Reid Street to the new Templeton Street premises. That Council does not support the increase in electronic gaming machines from 32 to 50 at the new premises in Templeton Street. That Council advises the Victorian Commission for Gambling and Liquor Regulation accordingly, and that Council considers the allocation of resources to develop a gaming and gambling policy to guide future decision making.
Thanks, Jamie. Is there any questions from the floor at this point? Yes. Name. Could you just come to the microphone, please?
Yeah, John Griffiths from Morale. It was just interesting to read the report this morning in the papers in this exact issue about gaming machines and the effect that gaming machines and additional ones having on violence in the home, violence against families and against women. And apparently there's a very strong correlation between the numbers of gaming machines and the amount of violence. So I guess I'm just supporting, and I'm very pleased to hear that the council is not supporting an addition of gaming machines when the RSL moves. I'm aware of the problems, the issues about finance, because organisations like football clubs and RSL receive quite a lot of revenue from them, but I think there's increasing evidence that there's just too many side effects, bad side effects.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Ash Power, I'm the president of the RSL. Thank you for taking this on board this evening. Just remind councillors and those around the table that the RSL, of course, is a charity that conducts business to enable us to perform our charitable functions. And we take the responsibility associated with having a licence to have gaming machines extremely seriously. The VCGLR recently hosted a regional forum for gaming venues to discuss the matters in relation to gaming machines. It was the RSL that put their hand up and volunteered to host that particular forum. It was the RSL who was the only gaming venue in the region who also invited the VCGLR representatives to come along and survey members to ask the questions that they had in relation to gaming. Quite simply, we've gone down this particular path because we've outgrown our current venue and we are unsustainable in the current location. We've always proceeded on the understanding that we were to get an increase of gaming machines because quite simply, if we only had 32, we could not sustain what we're going to do. And in fact, we won't do it if we only get a licence for 32. It simply won't happen, which would be a great downside for the community because what we intend on building is a great community asset. If you look at the plans, and I know you all have, there is no direct access from the rear door, that is the one exiting the car park, as stated in the SIS report as commissioned by council. So I've read that, I understand the recommendations and that. There are some things in there that I just disagree with. The rear entry car park door going straight into the gaming machine venue is not part of it. There is an increase in the number of people employed in the RSL as a result of the increased machines. That is pretty clear. I've also looked at the recommendations inside the SEIS report, and the RSL, apart from the rear door access really, agrees and is happy to comply with those recommendations, including the establishment of a community chest of which we would contribute $25,000 a year to be spent on welfare and other associated matters for those who are not as well off in the community as agreed between council and the RSL. But that would only be on the proviso that we got the extra gaming machines which enabled us to do that. So if the recommendation that Jamie read out then could be reworded slightly, then we have no issues with the recommendations inside the SEIS report as commissioned by council, and we'd be happy to work with council to make sure that the $25,000 in addition to what we already do inside the community and to support welfare can be spent on those who are most needy. As I said, we do take gaming very seriously. I have mandated that all committee members are to be RSG, Responsible Service of Gaming, qualified, and put through all our committee members on that. And we take great pride in the fact we provide a safe venue for people to come and enjoy the hospitality of others, including those who wish to use the gaming machines, and we will continue to do so in the future.
Thank you. Any more comments or questions?
Thanks for the chance. Phil Haynes from Wangaratta. I, like John, support your recommendation not to add the extra machines to make 50. I think it's well appreciated that there are a whole range of adverse effects of gaming machines. Fair enough. People can still have a choice to go and play them. That's fine. I think if we have more, we just increase the risk of other detrimental effects on the community. So I would support that. I guess my question is, once that goes through, if it goes through as a recommendation not to increase the numbers of gaming machines, can that decision be overturned by the relevant authority in Melbourne? So what's the process from here beyond council making that recommendation, please?
Yeah, so council as an authority doesn't actually have under legislation the authority to make the decision around the increase in gaming machines. This will go to a hearing at the VCGLR in a fortnight's time where it will be discussed, and they've set aside 2 days, after which a formal decision from the VCGLR will be handed down around the relocation and the relicensing of the premises and also the increase in gaming machine numbers.
So could I just ask quickly, what's the process there to decide whether they say yes or no to the increase?
So the commission will hear both sides.
Yes, so you'll present that?
Yes, so
Yep.
council will be represented at the hearing as well as the RSL. Experts will be called and there will be questions around the social and economic impacts of the application, after which time the commission will make a decision around whether the RSL has been successful in securing an additional 18 machines.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Yes, I have Councillor Rees have an alternate motion, a separate, not an amendment. So I'll accept that to put that. Or into.
Thank you, Harvey. I have an alternate motion for the supply of poker machines and to read as of such, to be voted on here at council prior to the previous recommendation that was read by Jamie. The alternate motion is that council supports the proposal at the Victorian Commission for Gaming and Liquor Regulation hearing for the relocation of the existing 32 electronic gaming machines from the existing RSL club to Templeton Street premises. In addition, council supports to an additional 18 machines at the Templeton Street premises. Number 2, that council advises the Victorian Commission for Gambling and Liquor Regulation accordingly. Point 3 is that council considers the allocation of resources to develop a gaming and gambling policy to guide future decision making. And point 4, that council supports or council considers the allocation of resources and the coordination of a collaboration between relevant agencies and organisations to develop strategies that address the high incidences of family violence within the community, obviously which will incorporate that 25,000 as described by Ash Power there in his briefing too. Thank you.
We have a seconder. Councillor Fuller. Do you want to say any more to the motion?
I do. I'd like to talk to the to everybody about this. I've done some reviews with with gaming machines in a close proximity to the Wangaratta area. And we have a township like Yarrawonga on the border there with a population of 7,057 as per the census report in 2011, so it shall be a little bit higher than that. And Mulwala at 1,986. And they have 439 gaming machines. Wangaratta currently has 136. And we're asking not for 100 more, for 18 more. We are currently allowed by Victorian Gaming, our quota, not to exceed at the present time, is 214 machines. So we would be well below that. The money that gambling machines raise through the RSL is also to support the community as well as our ex-soldiers, our servicemen and their families. I look at a town such as Corowa that has a population of 5,605 and Waganya 891 people in that vicinity. They currently have in excess of 265 poker machines. Now Wangaratta's regional population here of somewhere around 22 to 25,000 people has 136. How does that make sense? I speak to a lot of community members and older members that I see regularly who are constantly going to Yarrawonga, not so much to play the poker machines, but to use the facilities at golf clubs and RSL clubs, bowling clubs, that are backed by these poker machines. So this money from Wangaratta is going out to buy lunch, to buy a beer after a game of golf, etc. They're not staying in Wangaratta. The money will be spent back here as well in Wangaratta and on our people in Wangaratta. I reiterate again, we have 136 poker machines at the moment, so an extra 18 more machines. The precinct where the RSL is designed to go is going to be the precinct in Wangaratta. If the RSL doesn't go, what's that purporting us to? We have a council that stood up and said in earlier meetings, we are pro-development. You're either pregnant or you're not. You can't be half pregnant. So we're either for development or we're against development. This, to me, is good business economic sense for development of Wangaratta. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Rees. Speakers against the motion. Okay, I'll give it an opportunity. Speakers against the motion. Councillor Amory.
I fully support the relocation of the RSL Club with its existing 32 electronic gaming machines to the new location of the former Sydney Hotel site, as I believe that it will be beneficial to the club for many reasons. I cannot, however, support the increase of 18 more machines, which will bring the number of machines to 50. Wangaratta already has 136 electronic gaming machines in 4 separate venues, which in 2015-16 financial year had a total expenditure of more than $8.25 million. Gambling is known to have profound impacts on a community and the lives of many families and individuals. Data and research indicates that gambling can increase financial pressure on families and that domestic violence is associated with electronic gambling machine accessibility. Between 2015-16, the rural city of Wangaratta experienced an increase in the rate of family incidents of 26.1%, which is more than 4 times higher than the increase across the state of Victoria as a whole. The socio-economic indices for areas score of relative socio-economic disadvantage in rural city of Wangaratta municipality is above the state average for regional Victoria. Therefore, because of the broader social impact that the electronic gaming machines have on our community, I will not support an increase in the number of machines for the RSL Club premises. And all due respect to Councillor Rees, to suggest that we could spend ratepayers' money, taxes on resources addressing the gambling habits of our community members rather than prevention, I find abhorrent.
Thanks, Councillor Amory. Speaker for the motion, Councillor Fuller.
Yes, I'd like to just talk to the second part of Councillor Rees' motion, which is in regards to us addressing the root cause of family violence. And I would argue, or not argue, but ask the question in regards to the 4 times number, what relationship did that have to a previous increase? And I just would rather that we look and focus more on not the number of the machines, but the root cause of family violence in the community, given that we have got such a high cause. perhaps we need to look at a bigger, broader picture and work to that.
Thanks, Councillor Fuller. Any other speakers against Councillor Bustle?
Just wrong. Thanks, Deputy Mayor. I think it's a great project, the redevelopment of the Sydney Hotel, and I fully support that, and I fully support relocating the existing poker machines there. I cannot support extra poker machines, and I have done a lot of reading here, and I think they're parasites. Poker machines are just nothing short of parasites, and they will just suck the guts out of families here in Wangaratta, and I cannot support the extra poker machines.
Councillor Bustle. Councillor Rees, do you want to close the debate?
Thank you. I find it apparent poker machines don't take money from families. People give to the poker machines. So with our family rate of violence at the rate that it is, as Councillor Amy was saying, and I respect her opinion on that, it is very true. But as a council, we still need to spend that money, whether we've got 100 machines or 200 machines. I look at these other towns, such as Corowa and Yarrawonga, with their high amount of poker machines, and do they or do they not have family violence rates as high as ours? Could they be higher? So how can you attribute family violence just to poker machines? And that's what I'm hearing here, and that's not the case. If that is the case, we need to ban everything, which is alcohol, gambling as a whole, throughout Wangaratta at race clubs, online gambling, TAB gambling, it all associated here. I feel that the 136 poker machines is very low. An extra 18 is definitely worth considering. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I'll have to, you've had the... I'm sorry, you've had your chance to ask the question and comment earlier. We haven't got two motions, Mr. Griffiths. You haven't got two, you've only got one motion, I only have one motion on the table, I'm sorry. I've only got one motion. That was a recommendation. I'm not going to debate the issue. I only have one motion put in front of the table at the moment, please. I'm going to put the motion, and the motion was that we have the additional 18, as explained previously by Councillor Rees. All those in favour of the motion? Those against? Motion is lost. I'll ask for any other further motions. Councillor Amory.
I'd like to move a motion that we follow the recommendation that was put before the council in the first instance.
That is, the 32 existing ones be recommended.
Yes.
A seconder?
Would you like?
Councillor Bustle. You want to speak to the motion? Or any comments from the floor?
As I reiterated before, if your motion is what's agreed at the VCGLR, then this project will not go ahead. Thank you.
Do you want to speak to the motion?
Only to, I guess, reiterate what I said before, that gambling is known to have profound impacts on the community and lives of many families and individuals. And data and research indicates that gambling can increase financial pressure on families and that domestic violence is associated with electronic gambling machine accessibility. Therefore, because of the broader social impact that electronic gambling machines have on our community, I will not support an increase in the number of machines for the RSL club premises.
Thank you, Councillor. Speakers against the motion. Therefore, do you want to say any further? Otherwise, I'll put the motion. All those in favour of the motion? Those against? Motion's carried. Someone asked the Mayor to return. Before we proceed to... Yes.
Through the chair, just while the Mayor's returning, perhaps if I could just clarify a question that was asked earlier. The recommendations that are in the Council's business paper are simply that. They're only recommendations by officers. They're not motions until they're moved and seconded by Council. So the first motion to go through that process in this case was Councillor Rees and Councillor Fuller's motion, which is why that was being considered.
Infrastructure Services, Marie.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Council must undertake a review of the procurement policy in each financial year ending 30 June. At the Ordinary Council meeting on 21 March 2017, Council endorsed the draft for public exhibition. The policy sets out the principles, processes and procedures that will apply to all purchases of goods, services and works made by Council, and has been subject to a public consultation review where no public submissions were received. The resulting policy aims to achieve value for money and continuous improvement in the provision of services for the community. The recommendation is that Council adopt the Procurement Policy 2017.
Any questions from the floor? No questions from the floor. Someone like to move the recommendation? Move Councillor Fuller. Second Councillor Rees. Any discussion? Declare the motion carried. 15.2.
Thank you. In regards to the cleaning of toilet facilities on recreation reserves, currently there is an inconsistent approach, making it very difficult to make informed decisions. Therefore, a review of the use of and service provision of all public facilities is required. So we need to do a review before developing policy that will assist in future decision making. So we're recommending that Council undertake a service review of all public facilities within the rural city of Wangaratta to develop a policy in regards to service provision to assist in informed decision making, and then to present the policy at the July Council meeting.
Questions from the floor? No questions from the floor. Someone move the recommendation. Councillor Bustle. Second, Councillor Amery. Any discussion on the motion?
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I think it's a really good idea of this council. We've asked to know what we own, what sort of conditions they're in, and all these sporting facilities are very, very important, all of them. And so I think it would be a great idea to have a look at all the assets, put them all together, and then we can make a really, really good decision. And I'm looking forward to that. Thank you.
Any other councillors? I'll put the motion. Oh, Councillor Amy, sorry.
I fully support the review of all the public facilities within the rural city of Wangaratta, especially the Tarawinji toilets. Thank you.
Any other discussion? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? The motion's carried. 15.3, Road Management Plan.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. At the Ordinary Council meeting on 21st of March 2017, Council endorsed the draft Road Management Plan, the RMP, for public exhibition. The purpose of the RMP is to review, the purpose of the review is to define current road management practices and levels of service, including the inspection, maintenance and repair of all Council's roads as listed in the Register of Public Roads, with consideration of Council resources and community expectations. The recommendation is that Council adopt the Road Management Plan 2017.
Questions from the floor? No questions from the floor? Someone like to move the recommendation? Moved Councillor Rees. Seconded Councillor Benton. Any discussion? No discussion? I'll declare the motion carried. Development Services.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The first item tonight is Planning Scheme Amendment C66 Part 2, the Glenrowan Township Plan, consideration of submissions to the Part 2. Council may recall that on the 22nd of November 2016 at their first meeting, they considered the Glenrowan Township Development Plan, and there was a couple of parcels of land that were proposed to have their zoning changed, and it wasn't able to be done as part of Part 1, and the recommendation was that that be held over and further exhibited. The Part 2 was exhibited between February and March of this year. As a result of that, there were 8 submissions received, including a late submission which has been considered in the report. Council has also received some pieces of correspondence in the last 2 days in relation to one of the submitters and also from the applicant. We've considered that information and we don't believe that it changes any of the recommendations in tonight's, except that one of the areas is that in future, because of the amendment proposing to rezone the land and apply a development plan overlay, that council should develop a formal policy in relation to how they deal with development plan applications. At present, the development plan applications are not covered by legislation. They are at council's discretion as to how they go about approving them. In most councils, it is common practice to advertise a development plan and consider any submissions that are received for the development plan only, because once the development plan is approved, all third-party appeal rights associated with any permit under that development plan are removed. So there is no third-party appeal rights. So, and one of the more recent applications that we've had of this was the equine development in Reith Road, where we documented to the applicants that that was the process we were going to follow, is that we would publicly advertise the development plan application, consider any submissions at that point before approving the development plan and then proceeding to the permit application. And that is the process that we would propose to follow with this application, with the application of the development plan overlay. So the recommendation tonight is that council considers all the submissions to Wangaratta Planning Scheme Amendment C66 Part 2, Glenrowan Township Development Plan, pursuant to Section 22(1) of the Planning and Environment Act, amends the exhibited amendment documents to address the submitter's concerns as outlined in attachments 1 and 2, adopt the exhibited amendment with changes in accordance with Section 29 of the Act, pursuant to Section 31(1) of the Act, submit the adopted amendment to the Minister for Planning for approval. Pursuant to Section 35, formally advise all submitters to the Wangaratta Planning Scheme Amendment C66 Part 2 of Council's decision, and advise the Glenrowan community of Council's decision by way of publishing in the Wangaratta Chronicle.
Questions from the floor? No questions from the floor? Someone like to move the recommendations? Councillor Rees, Councillor Amery. Any discussion?
I'd like to talk, and this is a further development for Glenrowan to allow for more subdivisional land for people to build houses and move to the township of Glenrowan. It's a great township. It does need rebuilding, and the way to do that is by allowing for more people to come in, by allowing more land to be subdivided in different sized lots. So to my way of thinking, it's a great step ahead for Glenrowan. Thank you.
Any other discussion? No other discussion? I'll declare the motion carried. (16.2) Planning Scheme Amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The next item tonight is Amendment C67, which is the Oxley Township Development Plan. Consideration of the panel recommendations. This report is presented to Council as the relevant planning authority to consider a recently received panel report. In summary, the panel has generally supported Council's strategic approach to Amendment C67, which recommends that the amendment be adopted as exhibited, subject to some changes which are listed in the report. In essence, these township development plans are following the introduction of reticulated sewer and therefore the freeing up of available land within those townships. The recommendation tonight is that Council considers the recommendations of the C67 panel in accordance with Section 27 of the Planning and Environment Act 1987, adopts the Planning Scheme Amendment C67 Oxley Township with minor changes as recommended by the panel in accordance with Section 29 of the Planning and Environment Act 1987, adopts the revised Oxley Township Development Plan September 2015 and includes it as a reference document at 21.12 of the Wangaratta Planning Scheme. Pursuant to Section 31(1) of the Act, submit the adopted amendment to the Minister for Planning for approval pursuant to Section 35 of the Act and notify all submitters of Council's decision.
Thank you. Questions from the floor? No questions from the floor. Have someone move the recommendation. Councillor Ruiz and Councillor Benton. Any discussion?
Again, I'd like to talk on this matter again. It's a planning thing. This is a great thing again for Oxley. This will allow more land for subdivisional purposes and again building our communities, which is what we need as things build towards Wangaratta, which is our main town surrounding Oxley, Millwall, all these areas, and the rebuilding of all these towns is a great thing. With the introduction of obviously with town water and reticulated sewage, certainly makes that process a lot easier. Thank you.
Any further discussion? I'll declare the motion carried. No special committee reports, no advisory committee reports, records of assemblies of councillors.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Council is required to keep a record of its formal discussions through things like briefing forums and council meetings and to report those to council. So there are a series of those assemblies of councils that occurred through April and May that are reported and attached to this report. The recommendation is that council receives those reports of assemblies of council.
Any questions from the floor? Someone like to move the recommendation? Move Councillor Fuller, Councillor Benton. Any discussion? I declare the motion carried. Notice of motion, there are nil. No urgent business. Public question time. If you have a question, would you please come to the microphone, state your name and your address, and so that we can record it.
Yeah, Brian Jones, I'm from out at Bowser. Some years ago at a council meeting, a chap from Springhurst brought in a few rocks that he'd picked up off the Clugs Road out near Springhurst. A woman that was attending to home care did her tyres 3 times in a row. And some years ago I took some rocks into the council too, requested that sort of stuff not be used. And the danger of it is bad for the tyres. And I'd kicked many a rock off the roadside. And a few weeks ago, I picked up one off the road. Sitting up like that, well, how dangerous is that? Could you please make sure that that sort of material is not used for gravel surfaces? It certainly is great for strengthening asphalt roads, but it is dangerous for gravel roads. Could you please try to clear that off the roads and not use it on anymore?
You wish to? Marie?
Thanks, Brian. Yesterday we had a tour around the bus tour, and one of my parts of the council is the infrastructure side of it, and we are now removed from using that hard material, and we're mixing and trying to experiment with some of the materials to have a far better road surface that we don't. And yes, I agree with you, we've had that in the past, but we are changing, and Officer Clark explained some of the processes that they were going through in trying to get a far superior mix to go on top of the roads.
you wish to comment? Any further questions from the gallery? Yes.
John Griffiths again from Wangaratta. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to Council. I attended the very first meeting at Millawa, and I haven't really had an opportunity to get to the Council meeting again, so that's why I try and explain why I've come to Glenrowan rather than wait for Wangaratta. But I have two comments, if I might, and then a question. The first one started from very early in the year when there were comments made that the council, the new council, was a diverse group of people, and that just, the comment that it's diverse is a surprise to me, because when I look at the number of the people here in the council, it's predominantly white, male, apart from one, all older people, and probably all business people. So I just can't believe that you could say or claim that it's diverse. Secondly, I'd like to comment on the obsession that Wangaratta Council, and it's been going, it's not a reflection of this council, but it's just a comment generally that over the years that it's come by notice from town planner, from visitors, that Wangaratta as a city is absolutely obsessed with cars, totally obsessed. And I can give a few examples that following hearing those comments, I thought, yeah, is that really correct? And I believe it is. It goes back about a year or two, Merrill Park was almost totally lost because they want to convert that to a car park. There's always talk about a second river crossing, but I don't know whether there's any business case presented for that. Obviously, it's for cars. There's been complaints about the loss of car parks recently in relation to King George Gardens. I could probably go on with the comment that there's no attention given to bike lanes within Wangaratta, not one. There is a bike centre near Merrill Park. And finally, there's just not one legal pedestrian crossing in the CBD. Now, I've had two recent examples where I was walking on the footpath, crossing the entry into Plaza, and almost got bowled over. Talked to the driver and said, what are you complaining about? It's the right of cars. I've walked around the area behind Big W and have almost been knocked over there when I cross on the white lines. So I think there is an obsession. I don't know whether whether councillors agree or whether you're prepared to change that. My question though is, I did have a question clear in mind. Those two points have taken up my mind really. So I might just stop at that point. But I am concerned about the issue of cars and the lack of consideration to pedestrians. Thank you.
Through the chair, thanks John for your question. I'm not sure whether you've had an opportunity to have a read through the Wangaratta project, the CBD master plan, or not. There's a very strong focus in that master plan about trying to make the CBD much more pedestrian and cycling friendly. It's a very strong focus of that plan. There are a number of projects already underway to that end, including the redevelopment of Oven Street, and one of the goals of that particular project is to slow traffic down, provide a wider boulevard for pedestrian access, make cycling access easier, and also to provide some pedestrian crossings between the Coastore and the King George Gardens to increase accessibility to both the retail facilities and the gardens. So there is a very strong focus on what I would call pedestrianising the city. That obviously can't be at the expense of vehicles because roads still have a primary function for transport, but certainly a very strong focus of projects moving forward will be to better provide for pedestrians. The upgrading and relocation of pedestrian crossings is also a very strong focus in that plan, and you made the point that the pedestrian crossings are not great at the moment, and I was at the Probus Club earlier today with the Mayor and a number of less abled people in that audience, I would say, certainly talked about the difficulties that they have getting around the city with mobility walkers and those sorts of devices. So it certainly is high on our priorities to address crossings, to improve pedestrian access, to continue to build on what I think is a very good network of cycling paths around the city at the moment, albeit that they're off-road, not on-road. And I think that that'll be a strong focus going forward.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for that reply, but I'm just wondering, when you make reference to the pedestrian crossings, do you have in mind the official legal zebra crossings? Are we ever going to see any of those in Wangaratta? When we do see, when you travel around cities, towns all around Victoria, I've been in Western Australia recently, you get official pedestrian crossings, which I think the complaint in the letter recently, that, oh, this is going to slow down the traffic if the pedestrian has a right of way to cross. At the moment, that doesn't occur.
Yeah, thanks for the clarification, John. The answer is I would expect a mixture of both formalised pedestrian priority crossings, like you're referring to, as well as safe and convenient points to cross where vehicles have right of way, but pedestrians get refuge from traffic, for example. What we need to do to convince Vic Roads that we can muck around with some of their roads and some of their traffic flows is we need to develop a whole of CBD plan that shows what the mix of those crossings would be, what the locations would be, whether there's any impact on speed zones, for example, and show them how the whole network of those changes would occur in the city so that we can get their approval to create some of those crossing points which largely are on their roads and therefore need their approval.
John, I'd like to rebut in a kind way to your saying about our diversity in our councillors. I feel as a little bit below middle-aged, and I feel Dave Fuller as being young. I feel as Ruth Amory as a female is very different to the rest of us guys here. We've got our certainly above middle-aged, Harry, and then we've got our two mature gentlemen within our council. But we all come from different walks of life and different families. We all have different goals in our lives, and we all have differing opinions, as you heard tonight with our RSL club. We all different. Doesn't mean I'm wrong and I'm right, or Ruth's wrong or right, or whoever. We've got opinions, and we've put those opinions forward, and I think that is more of our difference and diverse range of councillors that we do have here tonight. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Councillor Roos. Yes.
Anne Dunstan in Tarrawingi. Quite recently the library held a Vic Roads forum regarding Great Alpine Road and the funding that they've received. Do the council have any input as to where that funding may be spent along that Great Alpine Road?
Alpine Road funding you saw advertised that was coming through from Bairnsdale across all the way through to the Great Alpine Road, including up to Wangaratta. Yes, it has been earmarked to be done. I'm not exactly sure on how much is being spent in road widening of that road, of the Great Alpine Road, through all the way through to Wangaratta. It is supposed to be millions of dollars. Did you have an idea?
Yeah, Maria.
No, sorry, I don't have any idea about the funding that they're spending on there, but Vic Roads did give us the opportunity to go to some of their meetings so that we could get an understanding of what they were doing and whether there was any of our roads that intersect with the Vic Roads roads that might need an upgrade at the same time. So Infrastructure Services was definitely involved in that aspect.
I suppose to clarify my question is that it's a big bucket that they've got for Great Alpine Road and it's a very long road, but do you as specific Wangaratta Council, this is our area of the road, can we say, yes, we'd like to have Tarrawingi reduced to a 60 zone, or we need to widen our shoulders to make it safe to have bikes on our roads, or are they looking for feedback like that from you as councillors?
Even in regard to the speed limits and that type of thing, council can sometimes make a recommendation to Vic Roads in regards to what we think is appropriate for that section of road, but it's definitely up to Vic Roads whether they approve that or go with that recommendation or not.
Yep. And the other question that I have still regarding Great Alpine Road is They're right at the Wangaratta end, which is Parfitt Road, might still be Parfitt Road, and then it's Great Alpine Road, but technically it's not Great Alpine Road because Great Alpine Road finishes at the bike path, and then there's this random little bit of road between the bike path and Parfitt Road, which is where there is a church located and the Miller's Accommodation Motel. We have people who park in that triangle every Sunday, and it is extremely dangerous because if you're coming down from Parfitt Road, turning right, heading up Great Alpine Road, they can't see you because they're in a hollow. I have approached Vic Roads regarding this, I've approached council regarding this, I've even spoken to the police about this, and no one will take responsibility for that portion of the road. So it needs some no standing signs put up in that section of road to make it safe for people, because generally it's the disabled churchgoers that are parking in that area because it puts them closer to the door, but it's not a safe place for them to be parking.
I can understand why that's a bit difficult sometimes when there's code of practice that talks about the demarcation between the Vic Roads Road and what they're responsible for and what council are responsible for. Even to put up some signage, we still need Vic Roads approval and have to work with those given that they're intersecting roads. We do have a traffic liaison group where we meet with Vic Roads to talk about these issues, so we can make sure that it's discussed then again at that group if that suits.
Yep.
And just very briefly through the chair, back on the issue of Great Alpine Road, Vic Roads will have put a budget bid in for that money, so I'm sure they'll have a pretty clear plan in their mind about what their priority areas are. My understanding is though not this week, but next Thursday evening, the Vic Roads executive team will be in Wangaratta for some sort of community consultation event where there'll be an opportunity both to hear from the Vic Roads executive about the work that Vic Roads are doing, but also an opportunity for people to talk to Vic Roads about some priority things that they would like to see them pursue. So I don't have all the details for that yet, but I understand that's coming up Thursday week sometime in the evening in Wangaratta. So it may be an opportunity for you to broach that direct.
So is that different to the one that they've just held at the library in regards to where we anticipate that their funding should be spent?
I think it is different. This is the CEO and senior executives of Vic Roads coming up from Melbourne to the region, which I think the one you're referring to was more likely regional representatives.
Yep. Thank you. Sorry. Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you. Any other questions from the floor?
John Griffiths, Wangaratta. I think this might be my second question. I hope you don't think it's the third one. The other thought that I was trying to grasp before was comments have been made by candidates early in the year or last year, and then probably during a bit this year, about the people who've stood for council. And I've seen, it's interesting to read comments in the papers, main articles about this situation of people who stand for council, whether business people are the best people, best candidates, or people who are non-business, in other words, perhaps from different fields. And I thought it was interesting that, I've been following this discussion, John Hewson actually wrote a feature article and said business people were not necessarily the best ones to deal with government issues.
What's the question, John?
I'm just wondering why there seems to be the obsession that candidates and then councils think that business people are the only ones that can successfully run a council. I'd just like to point out that a council is not a business. It's nothing like a business that organises or is purpose of profits. It's for serving the people. Now, I'm not saying that councils here don't serve the people. I think generally the councillors here, the ones that I do know, a little bit I read in the Chronicle every week, do a great job. But I'm just a little bit concerned there's that obsession that only business people could run a council, and I just thought it was interesting that Jeff Kennett was the other one. An article actually stated the same thing about business people, not the best ones for government. Thank you.
Well, if I could attempt to answer that, I think that that the recompense for being a councillor, for the hours that they've got to put in, is probably not in the interest of business people to put their hand up. But if you expect people to put 25 to 30 hours a week in, which I know my councillors are doing, for $25,000 a year, they certainly haven't got time to run a business and be effective councillors. So I think that's a bit unfair to say business people should be running council. Any other comments?
I've got a quick comment. As a business owner and have been for the last 25 to 30 years, there are certain parts of council that need to be run as a business. So to have business people involved in there is certainly a good thing, and this is why we need a wide range of councillors, and I feel we have that. So thank you.
Mr. Jones?
Yes, a few months ago the council came up to have a lot of informal meetings throughout the whole Shire, and I went to one at Divine Hotel where some of the councillors and staff turned up requesting suggestions that we might come up with, and I understand there was quite a few hundred points were submitted and some were accepted. I wonder if you could make it public what the ones are being accepted, and I was very pleased that that meeting was available so we could have face-to-face contact with suggestions.
Yes, thank you, and thank you very much for coming along. We had a huge amount of people who came and participated in the consultation process. So all of that information is what has fed into the council plan that has been put up before council tonight, and will go out for a further wave of consultation for final review before it's adopted by council at the special meeting in June. We will also, as part of that process, actually put out an overview of what the community told us and how those different points and priorities and obstacles have been fed into the council plan. But a lot of them have fed directly into the strategies and the actions that you'll see in the council plan when you get to have a look through it in detail. So there's a direct link between what the community told us and what has been fed into the council plan and what you will start to see rolled out over the next few years as priorities of this council. So.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Phil Haynes, Wangaratta. The land, it might be a council question, but the land in Faithful Street, so just next door to North East Water, so just between North East Water and the King River Bridge in Faithful Street. If you can picture that, there's a access point down to the river. There's a bit of a pad at the top, and often you have cars go down there midwinter, four-wheel drive, like to drive around, bog it up, etc., etc. It could be put to much better use, and that is a key point coming into town from Millawa on the right-hand side. It's often overgrown, cars get bogged, there's big holes, etc., etc. Contrast to the other side on the Ovens River, where there's a very nice area to access, go swimming, etc. I guess my question is, who is in charge of managing that area, and can we look towards finding different ways to perhaps either limit the car access down by the river where it does cause damage to the whole riverine environment? Could we limit cars to the top part, fence that off, for example, and just allow people to actually walk down or take boats down? So I'm not sure it's a council issue, but if you can let me know whose issue it is, if it's not council, so maybe we can look towards improving that, because it is a key part of the town.
Yeah, so it is something that we're aware of, and we have been trying to work with state government to address that. So it's hard in that it's not council-owned land, but we have identified it as a priority from a recreation perspective and also from an access perspective. So it would be able to open up that walkway and pathway and link it right through to some of our most significant walking and cycling tracks. So it is on our radar, and we are having negotiations around how to progress it through.
So is it DELP who's in charge of?
Yeah, it's DELP. Yeah,
Is it?
yeah. So, and it's both the infrastructure team and our recreation and community planning team are having conversations with them, and we've got some community groups that are lobbying for it as well.
Fantastic.
So.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Other questions? There's no other questions. There's no confidential business. I'll declare the meeting closed at 7:09 p.m. Thank you all for your attendance, and there is supper. if you'd like to stay for a cup of tea with us.